President Trump making it official. Federal Reserve Governor Jerome Powell will get the nod to be the next Federal Reserve chief. Of course, he has to go through the whole process before Congress before he is accepted to that post. But the president thanking Janet Yellen, who is the current Federal Reserve chief. They're very similar in their outlook. In fact, he reiterated, I don't know if you heard that, but he specifically reiterated everything the past four Federal Reserve chiefs before him have always said. We look to ensure stable prices and maximum employment. We are very close to maximum employment right now. In fact, as we look at the markets and the reaction, there is almost no reaction. We did see about a 11-point gain on the Dow Jones Industrials on top of what we already seen. Volatility is still very low for the VIX. It was interesting to see that the 10-year Treasury yield remained pretty steady with all of this. So it was widely telegraphed and expected, certainly. No surprise. But we bring our guests back in one more time. Ward McCarthy, who is the former economist at the Richmond Fed. We also have Atlanta Fed president, former Atlanta Fed president Dennis Lockhart and Charlie Gasparino. Dennis, I was asking you the question right beforehand, but did anything jump out at you that you wouldn't have expected here, or was it pretty even-toned?
Nothing really surprised me at all.
Dennis first.
Yeah, nothing surprised me in the comments. The script that Jay Powell worked off of, I think, is pretty predictable. And this appointment represents continuity, steadiness. I think those things are very important in this role. It's as I said earlier, Liz, it's an outstanding appointment.
Ward, we are expecting, at least when we look at the Fed funds futures, which give us a sense of what people are betting we'll see in December at the next Fed meeting, that we will see, there's a strong possibility, more than 93%, that we will see another rate hike. Talk to our viewers right now. What will that mean if we see another couple of rate hikes, or maybe even 3 next year? What does that mean to their credit card interest rates? We expect to see those go higher. There could be a whole bunch of reactions here. The rate, well, student loans are generally fixed if they're federal, but if they're private student loans, you might see higher interest rates. Not big on the auto loan movement, but mortgage rates and adjustable rate mortgages will move higher. Ward, you're the economist. Tell us, what can we expect?
Well, yes, I think we should expect that rates will go higher. Rates are extraordinarily low right now, and quite frankly, as the economy continues to gain strength, those low interest rates will no longer be appropriate and could cause an acceleration in inflation that nobody, especially the Federal Reserve, wants.
Bingo.
So I do think we'll get a rate hike in December. I think we'll get 3 next year as well. And I do think that the entire yield spectrum will gradually drift higher over the next couple of years as the Fed continues to pursue a normalized policy. But again, I think it will be a rather gradual process, and I don't think it's going to be particularly disruptive, especially on the consumer side of
Liz,
the equation.
Can I make a point here?
Sure.
I think, listen, everybody loves, from a market standpoint, it's, I can understand why our two guests like Mr. Powell. He's smart. He's going to be a continuation of Janet Yellen. But let's be real clear here. I mean, there is a counter argument here. The Federal Reserve has had very loose monetary policy since 2008. There's an argument that they should have tightened sooner, and that they should normalize so the markets stand on their own, not stand on where the Fed is, not stand on what the Fed is doing all the time. And, let's also be real clear here. Jerome Powell is a smart guy, but he's not the most qualified guy to be in this job. He's the guy that Donald Trump likes because he's gonna have a light touch when it comes to monetary policy, and he's probably going to be less independent than a John Taylor or a Kevin Warsh. And I'll tell you, maybe that's good, but, the Fed hasn't been that great for the average economy. I mean, we should point out that, yes, the headline unemployment number is very low, but underemployment isn't doing so great. The U6 numbers, I look at that. It's nothing to write home about. Wages aren't doing so great. This is with all the Fed money printing that benefited the rich, did not necessarily benefit the middle class, or else Donald Trump wouldn't have been president. And then he turned to essentially the same Fed chief that they helped give us this. Well, it's a little odd.
Dennis Lockhart, you were a voting member. You were there. You've been in on these meetings. What do you need to see now? And I take Charlie's point here. We really have remained at low rates, well beyond the emergency. We've just had 2 quarters back-to-back of 3% growth. Our labor market is almost bursting at the seams. It's doing so well. We have the lowest unemployment rate since the 90s. I mean, looks extraordinarily good. Do we risk seeing inflation not creeping in, but galloping in like a horse at full gallop, and then you get caught by the tail when it comes to spiking prices and wages?
On inflation, I doubt it. There's always a chance, of course, but I doubt that we're going to see inflation spike dramatically. And in fact, what the Federal Reserve or the FOMC wants now is a little bit higher inflation, and the performance of inflation numbers in the second half of this year and into next year will have a lot to do with whether we get that rate hike in December or the 3 rate hikes or whatever number might come in 2018. I want to come back to a point that, you can put way too much pressure and way too much emphasis on the Fed chair per se. It is a committee process.
Yeah.
I was part of it for 10 years. The Fed chair, the FOMC chair leads the process, but it is a committee decision.
Good to see all of you guys. Thank you so much. It is Jerome Powell for now. He's got to pass the run through the gauntlet of Congress. Charlie, Ward, Dennis, wonderful to have you all weighing in.